captains. What are you expecting coming into this on Bacon?
Yeah, I think for the lane is going to be very important to keep our eyes on what gets played there. We've seen a little bit of a resurgence of Ringo. We know Starting All Over is a phenomenal Ringo player, so that could be something that Immortals have to keep in their back of their mind. Before we get too much into the draft, so I do want to make one quick correction to something you said. Hammers have already locked in a spot at the Unified Live Championship because of the Gangstars' loss. So they have a spot guaranteed, but they do still want to keep getting points so that they can lock in that third place spot and have the highest seed that they can get.
All right, so Hammers just looking for seeding at this point. This is going through very quickly on the draft, though. Catherine and Batiste locked in, but on opposite sides of the scoreboard, Suijay.
Yeah, for sure. Normally, Hammers on the A side, they have done Jewel Celeste, for example, and picked that. And they banned Cruel. So is the Cruel ban going to come out here with the Batiste ban coming out from the side of, with the Batiste pick, coming on the side of Immortals here. Hammers also like Samuel, so Samuel may be potential banned. They're going to go with the Cruel ban as they've done before. And now Immortals has to pick a laner. Most likely, Vox, Idris look really good right now because Vox is pretty good into Cat with Kesho being banned. There's Baron. Baron is open, so they decide not to pick up the Baron. I guess Hammers will probably take the Baron here, if not the Jewel. But I think Baron will probably be picked up along with a Samuel potentially, or Koshka.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of reason for them not to go for Baron at this stage. Like, there's no real hard counter to the Baron that's going to get picked up. Idris is not going to get grabbed with the Vox already secured. So I think a Baron pick here for Hammers would make a lot of sense if they want to go that route. They have played it 3 times this season. Obviously, it was in the first half of the season, so they do not have any wins with that hero. So maybe that will keep them away from it.
Yep, it's going to be a triple stun composition that they played a lot here.
Yeah, this is an incredibly... it's not necessarily an aggressive composition in that they're going to be forcing the engages all the time, but when they find an opportunity, you can capitalize so hard with a composition like this. We'll see whether they're going to be able to pull it off. We've definitely seen them succeed with compositions like this in the past, though.
Yeah, they've had a lot of strengths with these hard engage compositions. Like, well, if you can get that first stun, you can lock down an opponent and absolutely blow them up. We just saw in the highlight clips before, Starting All Over, going off on this hero with this composition. So we know that it's something that can be done. Samuel is the final pick here, and just a good amount of kind of counter engage from the side of Immortals going up against this composition.
For sure. We've got the Samuel in the hands of T-Tigers as well. Something that, I feel like Samuel at this point, every jungler in the Vainglory8 is proficient on. He's been so consistent within the meta. You can pick him into most matchups, so it's kind of just a staple pick. Now, looking at the compositions then, how are we feeling about this one? Because this is a crucial game for Immortals. Like, their backs are against the wall before they even come into this week. So do we feel like they have what it takes in this composition to make a serious showing?
Yeah, as long as they get some early reflex blocks, because Hammer's comp is stronger because they won't have reflex blocks in the beginning, so they need to be very careful for those engages. However, Batiste and Kath is more of an outplay. They both have Echo outs. And Samuel has a sleep, so they need to take advantage of that. So it's going to be based on which team and I'll play which team here.
Okay.
The concern for me with Immortals is actually going to be their mental state. I mean, there's a ton of pressure on them, and this is a very young team. The players are all very young, and so there's a lot of weight on their shoulders to be able to perform, and it can be very easy to let that get to your head.
Well, we've mentioned before how Immortals and Dienzio specifically get that buff when they get to LAN. Can they get the buff to get to LAN in the first place? That's going to be the question on everyone's lips. Let us know whether you think Immortals has what it takes or whether Hammers are just too strong right now on Twitter using that hashtag Vainglory8. Get involved, but without further ado, let's get into our second semi-final of North America. It's the Hollywood Hammers going up against the Immortals.
Last time, Scoundrel, that we saw Starting All Over on this draw, it was him backdooring a Vein Crystal to get a map off of Tempo Storm. Hammers sitting 1 point from being in the Unified Western Live Championships, guaranteed, and Immortals looking to run the gauntlet. Let's see how this one plays out.
Yeah, Hammers of the rest of the teams below TSM and C9, Hammers are in the best position possible. Played by Afro going in here, Starting All Over, joining him. Very aggressive move early on.
It's something we saw TSM do at the beginning of the season, I believe, Scoundrel. Something that worked out so well for them, because Immortals are trying to fight, but Starting All Over has all of the damage to him. Dienzio's falling. T-Tigers can get involved and Hammers can't pursue any further because of the fact that T-Tigers is just sitting right around the corner. It does force, though, Immortals to share gold and experience with each other, which may put T-Tigers back a little bit.
Yeah, and you're going to get Archaic now at level 2 as well. This is a fight that I think Hammers will want to try and take.
Oh no! Oh, Playboy Afro! You just rooted T-Tigers on the spot and T-Tigers will go down! Yes, you secure that kill! You deserve it, my man! Can Max Green escape? It looks like he may be able to. Has that boots. But the stun into the Treant route, playoff Afro, brings some EU to NA.
Oh, Dalsy, it was so wonderfully played by Hammers. They were drawing, especially because of that trade that Dienzio's tried to take with a jewel facing him, by the way. I won't get into that to too much detail, but never try and take a trade with a jewel that is consistently facing you. They baited Immortals to stay in their own side jungle and didn't punish by pushing lanes. So the best way to punish a laner invading is by pushing your lane to push it to turret and then just trying to sacrifice and give up as much of the jungle that is safe to do so. And Archaic got level 2, Dalsy, and then Archaic joined the fight. A 3v3 with a level 2 power spike is just so hard for this Immortals roster to face up against, who don't have a very good level 1, mind you. Really well played by Hammers.
This is an insane start to a game that means so much for both these teams, but arguably more for Immortals. This is something that they're going to have to really look to bounce back from. The Samuel into the Celeste, an interesting dynamic, and right now a bit of a siege breaking out. One thing that Samuel can do pretty well. Playboy Afro takes a bit of poke, so does starting, as Archaic does move up into the lane. It looks like Immortals may be pretty content just moving as a 3 right now.
Yeah, trying to catch out Archaic potentially. They'll walk over a scout trap. They have split the team up here. T-Tiger's running through, uses the boots, but man, Archaic already out, uses his own. And actually now, Hammers have got positional advantage on Immortals. Dienzio's going to have to dash across the wall. Max Green in a bad position.
Oh, that's a beautiful core collapse into the stun, into Playboy Afro. 2 kills for him. Looking to take these guys home. It's just
that
him
was so weird,
styling.
Dalsy. It's so weird because Dienzio knew what was up because he dashed across the wall. Wait a second, Samuel might be caught out.
Yeah, oh my goodness. Okay, that is just... It looks like T-Tigers has perhaps lost control. This time it will be Archaic finding a point here. Perhaps his first kill, but perhaps maybe deservedly his third, you could argue. Dienzio's in lane, so pushed up. He must know Hammers is coming for him, looking to claim the bounty, and it will be starting, taking it. What an insane start. 4-0, Scoundrel. What do you have to say?
Hammers are here to play. I mean, they know that they need just that 1 point on the table, and Gangstars are probably there cheering Hammers on in the backline, because if Immortals go out now and lose to Hammers in this series, that's one more contender that Gangstars don't have to worry about taking their position from. So big moves for Hammers right now. Huge early game. And again, Immortals just sort of lost in the back foot in their jungle. Dienzio knew to rotate away from the lane, dash over the wall to take the safe path, but Max Green, for some reason, wasn't on the same page, gave over a kill. And now Immortals struggling behind at this point in time. Not yet 1,000 gold. There is still early games, so it's still fairly close in terms of gold differences, but man, Hammers played an aggressive game, and if you can get Celeste out of the jungle in an aggressive fashion, accelerate her to level 8 without being punished too heavily, that's going to be feeling pretty good for Hammers.
Oh, for sure. They are essentially playing her so aggressively that it means that she can't be falling behind to the Samuel right now, who arguably would have a stronger early game and could really be forcing the issue with that Baptiste as well. Hammers, man, they have taken over, but they haven't found as huge of a lead, I think, as they would have wanted. Right now, it is just bragging points, it seems. 4-0 on that board. And I expect Immortals to continue to look to try and make sieges happen, especially with the range advantage they have.
Something that we haven't really talked about is starting all over right now is slightly behind in CS compared to Dienzio. 13 advantage for Dienzio right now. I think in part due to starting all over making a lot of rotations out of lane. So Dienzio's got a small advantage over his opponent, which actually equates to a significant portion of gold. And it's why, despite the fact that it's 4-0, the gold between Immortals and Hammers right now is very even. So it's been a blistering start for Hammers, but the gold doesn't really reflect that, just simply because of how well Immortals have continued their farm. They're looking to set this up. Nice left.
They're going in. It's going to be a stun. Oblivion, they're going to put starting to sleep.
Oh, the position
He
of
does it. He goes down. The fountain, not in time, and that's going to be a kill going over to Immortals. What the hell? You saw something I didn't.
Yeah, sorry. The Oblivion caught darting, facing away from Samuel.
Archaic. He's gone down as well. Yeah, okay. This is it. Immortals are here to play Scoundrel. Oblivion, Jewel turned around, which meant that her heroic perk was not active.
Yeah, so Jewel turned around on the Oblivion, so the first Malice and Verdict that T-Tigers used to break the sleep on starting were hitting like trucks. And starting at that point had no option but to try and back out, which meant his back was still turned, and that meant Dienzio was able to finish things off. Suddenly a massive swing back for Immortals here, who are now, well, actually ahead in gold, can you believe it or not? I can't help but feel that Suijay on the desk right now must be feeling kind of conflicted. He wants, as Gangstar's COO, Hammers to win, but he is the Immortals ex-coach, so he's probably like...
These are his boys.
Exactly, he's probably feeling pretty proud, but as the Immortals ex-coach, he's like, I don't... Oh, sorry, the Gangstar CEO, I don't want Immortals to win.
Yeah, no, I'm actually loving the dynamic between us. We'll talk about it in a sec. It's just going to be starting all over. Dead once more. Playboy Afro, where's your fountain at? Doesn't come out in time. And that's going to be another kill going over to Dienzio here. Immortals, right now, with T-Tigers and Max Green. 2 members from last season's Hammers squad currently bringing their way back into this. They need to win this Scoundrel. They need to make a deep run in this week's Vainglory8 if they want to have a shot of making it back to the Unified Western Live Championship.
And because of that farm advantage, suddenly Dienzio is spiking in items over, starting all over. The tension bow has been finished. He's picked up some armor. He's got the reflex block. Right now, all of this sort of tempering of the early game came specifically through taking a farm advantage and keeping up in farm, which begs the question as to starting all over. Yes, the invades were good, but they didn't really capitalize off some of those invades. They didn't rotate to the backs. They didn't steal much of T-Tiger's jungle away, despite having an incredibly good early game. They let Immortals have breathing space, and that breathing space was used to kill many, many minions, which has allowed, obviously, Dienzio and T-Tigers to hit their item spikes pretty happily, and right now, they are ahead in terms of damage output.
Yeah, they certainly are. Not only that, they have reflex blocks to try and deal with what Hammers are throwing at them. This was the old school stun composition, block them down, blow them up, but right now Immortals are saying no. It's going to be that big red button burning through just a little bit on the weapon power Jewel. Hammers taking a bit of damage as well. Immortals, though, they have this range to them, Scoundrel, especially considering that it's only Archaic who can output range damage. So Immortals are able to throw so much back with the Drifting Dark empowered Malice and Verdicts, and with Max Green able to throw bad mojos, it seems like they can just poke Hammers out at range and keep them at bay. Starting all over, going to go low here. He's on a scout trap! Oh, he goes down as well! Max Green is a captain, but he just tiled on them all! And now it's going to be Immortals looking for more! Fearsome Shade! This should be it! Immortals taking a turret, taking it all! And they're just going to take control over this game.
Man, they've got so many ways to bait out Crucible here. They have the silence from Vox. Now, if the silence from Vox hits, that means you're likely going to be able to land another form of major CC. But in that particular engage, Oblivion warrants a Crucible. Fearsome Shade warrants a Crucible. In some instances, Vox silence warrants a Crucible. When the Echo comes out for Max Green, it is going to be devastation for the Hammers roster, and you saw how impactful once they forced the Crucible with that Oblivion. You saw how impactful that Fearsome Shade was for Dienzio to run down a Celeste that was literally eating the wall.
This is a incredible comeback from Immortals, a very patient one at that, and perhaps it is a huge mistake from Hammers, you could argue as well, Scoundrel. Starting all over is just not finding any damage. He does not have a reflex block, and he needs to be able to escape these Oblivions if he's going to have any chance of putting any damage down onto Dienzio or T-Tigers.
But what is your priority in terms of... Wait a second.
Another fight breaking out. It's going to be that silence going out. Playboy decides not to block it. This time it's okay. They get away with it, but they're all very low. Fountain available to use, but I don't think Hammers will be popping it unless Immortals look to force a fight, which currently it looks like they may. T-Tigers has his ultimate up in 4. Playboy looking to push them all back. Fearsome Shade crucibled, but Archaic still gets caught in it. And Playboy Afro may just lose his life. Has Fountain, will he use it is the question. Pops that Storm Guard banner. He is going to just walk away. Immortals, though, very happy to just take that the Treant and walk out.
And Max Green's going towards Echo right now. And I think all this talk about Crucibles it begs the question, if you are Hammers, what are you crucibling?
Yeah.
What is your
And if
priority?
And if you're starting, do you actually build a second Crucible? You know, it's something that we see when the Crucibles just become too many. The things needing to block become too many that your carry might just pull one out as well. That would be a pretty investment. Oh, okay, another fight bringing out, starting jumps in, but there's the Oblivion. Playboy Afro throws out the silence, but look at the damage coming out of Immortals. Playboy Afro goes down, and it's Vox stacking. Archaic, he's gonna lose his life, throws out the Solar Storm. The big red button will not find a kill starting, gets Oblivioned, not Oblivioned, ordained. Made to repeat for his sins. I can't speak. It's an ace. Immortals just gonna take it.
That's a language that we all understand, Dalsy. It's an ace, and it's on Immortals' side. They're going to take another turret for this, and suddenly things have been turned around. The team fight is so difficult for Hammers to deal with. As a duel, you don't really want to pick up a reflex block. You want to accelerate yourself towards as many damage items as possible. When you look, let's take a look at what the Hammers composition is supposed to do, Dalsy, and we'll bounce this off each other, because you've got starting.
Yes.
Let's duel with this crit build. He wants to go in, right? Just goes in, yeah?
I agree. Yes.
Yeah.
I thought that was
No. I was just looking for confirmation, my friend.
Yes.
Then you have Archaic. So would you agree that the game plan from Hammers is you basically send Playboy Afro and starting all over in, and then from the backline, Archaic is like your siege ballista. So you have the distraction, the siege ballista. Wait a second, fight.
Fight breaking out, starting almost dead. Before we even get into it, he is just dead. Archaic down as well. The fearsome shade onto Playboy Afro. Whatever the win condition is of Hammers, it's clearly not coming through because Immortals have a different plan here at Scoundrel. And Immortals, they just look to just charge on in and destroy Hammers every fight. Yes, Hammers, their idea is stun lock. Starting jumps in, Playboy puts that Merciless Pursuit in, Archaic is unthreatened at the back line and able to call collapse to keep that CC chain alive. But due to the fact that there's just so many things to block and so many things to dance around, it's just not happening for Hammers.
And the major issue is, when you fall behind with a composition like this, Duel does not really work as a peeling hero. Like, she can't peel back and fight, like, backwards, right? She's kind of a forward-designed hero. She's supposed to jump in, be aggressive. A defensive Duel simply just does not work. And it's kind of similar for Catherine, although Catherine has got peel in her kit with the silence and the stun. But with starting, if you're being aggressive against a Duel and are winning all of the time, it's very difficult to make Duel work the way you want her to. And that's probably one of the issues you're seeing starting have here. A defensive Duel is a bad Duel. Not in terms of the player playing it, but it's just in terms of what the hero provides. And I think that's really sort of being shone light on here, because now that Immortals have the advantage, Dalsy, they just run down this Hammers composition. And Hammers, when they are being run down and have no response, are in the weaker side of their composition.
Yeah, and this is a composition they ran last week. Immortals clearly have done their homework and thought, you know what? How do we make Jewel go defensive? We throw Silences, Oblivion, Fearsome Shades, and ordain her so that she is forced to be, jumping away from us to escape the ordained, or jumping into a stun. When she lands, we can blow her up. T-Tigers has taken a lot of damage here at Scoundrel. They are going to just kite backwards with that Frostbite. There's the silence going out. Oh, it silences all! The Crucible comes out in time, but it doesn't matter. Archaic is dead, and starting all over will go down as well. Playboy Afro, last man standing, had to be the one to keep everyone alive, and he just could not do so. Gonna have to watch a VOD of Gabe Vizzle if he wants to be able to Crucible, because it's just too many things to decide from, and he will lose his life regardless.
And that is the combo that is so devastating between Vox and Batiste. You have to block the Vox silence, and you have to time it in such a way that you expect Immortals to use the Fearsome Shade directly afterwards. But not blocking either, or not blocking the Vox silence, can just basically result in that happening, and I don't even know if they're going to be able to defend their Vein Crystal.
This is not the result that Hammers needed. May I remind you, at Scoundrel, they just need a single point to secure their unified Western Live Championship position. And currently Immortals are saying, you're not going to get any points, and they're saying, watch out, Gangstars.
Watch out, Gangstars, indeed. What a performance. What has it been with these North American teams? It's like they've gone into overdrive on a weekend where literally anything can happen. Immortals have just turned things up. I don't think we've seen a game go past 17 minutes almost. It has been crushing defeat after crushing defeat for the teams on the losing end of things. Absolutely ridiculous.
This is the Immortals we saw in the Challenger Series, and they're here to play. I want to know what Sweej thinks of it all and the rest of the desk, so let's throw it back to them.
I have to say I'm curious on what Sweej thinks of this one as well. Immortals, a phenomenal performance. When their backs are against the wall, they apparently turn into cornered T-Tigers and pounce on their foes. That was awful. I'm sorry, guys.
That was pretty good. But I gave you a props though. That one was good.
Sweej, talk to me here. Obviously, we know that Immortals is close to your heart. You've got to be over the moon on this
Yeah, it's
one.
conflicting because if they do well, that means Gangstars has less of a chance to make it to finals, but may the best team win, honestly. So, and they played really well. They had a really rough game in the early game because Hammers just showed up. I mean, they had 4 kills to 0 with the CC, and
with
I knew.
the Celeste.
Yeah, and I told you, and I said it, like they're gonna do really well in the early game because of the CC, and then as soon as IMT started rushing reflex blocks, you saw that all change. And this is a beautiful sleep by T-Tires. He sleeps the Jewel, and they're able to then kill starting, and then the fights just keep turning around. And Hammers is not able to respond to this like Baptiste Ordain with the Malice and Verdict hitting them and then box rushing them, and Immortals just knew their that was a pretty funny kill there, but Immortals just knew their win condition and they played it really, really well.
Yeah, they certainly did, and just running away with the game as well. Once they'd got any kind of grasp on this game, they didn't let Hammers anywhere close to the scoreboard again, Big.
Yeah, just constantly preventing Jewel from being able to have the impact that Starting All Over needed to have here. And there was multiple times where he got stunned mid-jump to try and get into the fight, or just getting pushed away after getting in by a Fearsome Shade. All sorts of different tools were being used by the side of Immortals to make sure that Jewel did not have the impact. And we thought here, we were like, all right, he's going to go in. He's going to find himself a huge triple kill. It's going to be the big turnaround the Hammers need. But then just the members of Immortals able to dodge out the rocket leap and turn it around and find that ace.
It's like 2 kids outplaying each other, basically. Zio just outplayed starting there. That was beautiful. And you can see that fight, Zio was focusing Cath, and Tiger's on the very top. And then Tigers then focuses Cath, and he gets the kill on Cath. And that just shows you the synergy that Immortals has and who to focus. And they just played it so well, and they got ace after ace and just snowballed it from there. And I don't know why Hammers kept looking for a fight. Similar to what Gangstars did, you are behind. Don't try to force a fight. Regroup, think about it a little bit. But they kept trying to force a fight. They land the fear, and then Malice and Verdict is up. This is the win condition that Immortals needs. Gets the kill, and then ends the game off that for sure. But max screen on Baptiste, Captain, wow. Blocking Sciences, landing with nice Ordains, land nice Spheres. He played Baptiste extremely well, so it's great to see him back in the fold here.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we kept on seeing him and Dienzio using that Baptiste-Vox combo in a similar way to how you see the Catherine-Baptiste combo, where there's silence, there's no more opportunity to use the defense, and then the Fearsome Shade comes on in. Well, fantastic first game from Immortals, and now we have to look towards game 2. The Hollywood Hammers fans out there, all they need is a singular game. I mean, obviously at this point, with the Gangstars loss earlier,
right,
Hammers are safe anyway, but you want anything you can get, right? You want the Hammers to climb up the scoreboard if you're a fan of theirs. But Immortals, they have come in swinging this week. Honestly, that game is one of the best performances we've seen from Immortals across the Vainglory8. And obviously, they've not had a fun schedule, but the Hammers is a team that have been absolutely on par with the top teams right now, and Immortals taking them on it's a big statement for them.
Yeah, I mean, Scoundrel asked, what's going on with these North American teams? I think they all just kind of woke up and looked at the standings and went, oh crap, we're out of time. We need to show up in a big way this weekend, and that's exactly what everyone is doing. Just dominant performances. Like you said, every single win thus far has just been a very much a one-sided affair, apart from like the early games. Then once we get to the mid game, one of these teams just takes over and is playing so decisively. This is what we love to see as analysts, is teams playing decisively, getting a lead and never letting go.
Yeah, just confident, calm, collected play coming out from these teams, and being able to snowball those advantages when you get them, not make the mistakes to let it slip away. Well, Immortals going to start off by banning out this Grace, and now Hammers have to decide where they want to go with this draft. There's a lot of first picks that are available in the current meta, and they have to decide which one is most valuable to the Immortals.
Yeah, normally they'll ban the Catherine, and then Immortals will probably pick up either Lyra or Baptiste, or maybe just Baron off the bat. They're going to actually pick up the Lyra here. And now it leaves Baron, which is not a good pick into Lyra, but it does leave Baptiste up. So most likely Hammers wants to get the Baptiste-Glaive combination here that they played before, and with good effect into a Lyra composition. So if anything, they'll probably first pick the Baptiste, and if Glaive is not banned, they're going to pick up the Glaive on the second pick there. And most likely they'll ban Baron after they pick the Baptiste.
Yeah, it would make a lot of sense, although Immortals very likely know that that's the plan, so I would assume that if the Baptiste is picked up here, they would just go ahead and ban away the Glaive with their second ban. So instead, it's going to be the Glaive first picked. Again, you'd have to assume that Baptiste would be targeted, but now, if the members of Hammers, I was going to say if they leave Baron open, that then would make Immortals think, but with the Baron ban, I feel like this is just an easy Baptiste ban for Immortals.
Yeah, I agree. And Glaive first pick is very interesting because I feel like Baptiste is a better pick because you can flex him in jungle or captain. They're instead going to go ahead and take away the Kestrel instead, and that's going to give Hammers the Baptiste combo that they normally play here.
We'll see whether they're going to be able to grab that combo for themselves. Hammers now going to be deciding where to go with this one. Obviously, the Glaive we've seen in all three positions across the course of this season. Captain least, I think lane the most, but jungle was definitely the most recent meta version of Glaive. Definitely still available in all three roles if you do lean that way, though. So we'll see where Hammers want to go with this draft, and this next pick will likely...
Adagio comes out.
Okay, so it's not going to be the double heal Adagio, obviously, because Lyra is picked and Grace is banned, though.
I think they took the Adagio here to deny the double heal from Immortals, very likely, just because Dienzio would have been fine playing the Adagio in the lane.
You can take
and
Samuel
there's going to
here.
be Vox picked up, however, for Immortals.
And it's Samuel.
Yep. And it's actually an interesting fact about the Vox is it's kind of surprising that Hammers haven't put more priority on this hero, because they are 5-0 when they get Vox in their hands. It's one of the only heroes that they have multiple games on while still maintaining that 100% win rate.
This is that standard composition that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago on broadcast. Actually, Koshka going to be the final pick coming on
that's
through
a very
here.
aggressive comp, but again, into a Samuel Lyra is very risky because Samuel Lyra beats Koshka. That's why a lot of teams don't play Koshka into a Samuel Lyra. And on top of it, when Vox gets his power spike and items, like Vox and Samuel can destroy a Koshka that wants to jump in like that. So pretty risky, but they pull up the early game aggression. Tamers can pull this game off, but they let it get to mid to late game, then Lyra and all the CC and power from Samuel and Vox is going to just shut them down.
Yeah, and there's a lot of pressure on the Hammers players right now. They want as many points as possible. They want to get up that seeding because other teams are going to catch up to them. They are barely any points ahead of the rest of the pack right now. Immortals are 1-0 up in this series. Do Hammers have what it takes to push this to a third game, Vic?
They definitely do, but I don't know if this is going to be the composition for them to do so. Like CJ said, it's very strong early on, but if you don't have a massive lead by the time the mid game comes around, it is going to be so difficult. And we've already seen multiple games where a team has won the early game, but didn't have that massive lead going into the mid game and end up losing it.
All right, well, let's get on into this game. Hashtag Vainglory8 on Twitter to let us know who you are supporting. But it's time to find out what the Hollywood Hammers are made of and if they can push this to a 3-game series up against Immortals. It's time to pass it over to our wonderful casters. It's Dowsy and Scoundrel.
This is a very aggressive competition coming out of Hammers. Last week we saw them take a pre-12-minute win off of Cloud9 in the finals, and right now Hammers are saying we're going to come back into this series and we're going to do it going fast.
I like the change-up of tactics from the starting all over invade. Immortals learnt their lesson from last time, and Zio pushes that lane up a little bit to make it a little bit of a harder decision for Hammers, or they are going to continue this pressure here.
Ooh, it's going to be a knockback. Max Green is going to be forced around the corner. Looks like he should be able to escape okay here at Scoundrel, as currently okay happy to take his jungle, but that is going to be the Treant going over to Hammers. Playboy able to steal it, and now they're roaming into the lane to try and take out Dienzio as well. That Afterburn not ready, so there's going to be no aggression, but Hammers still stealing away a camp.
But, you know, it's a forward healing Treant that didn't result in a net set of kills for Hammers in the early game here. So what I really like from Immortals is that they learned from the aggression that Hammers had. Dienzio gets to lane, pushes the lane up just a little bit. Didn't quite get where he wanted to. Actually, I think has accidentally given Hammers a small area where they could try to freeze it. But then Hammers is just going to push back. And Dienzio's given himself a small CS advantage over starting at the end of this this wave, because obviously there's still quite a few minions to collect here for Zio, so he's just going to get those and put them in his back pocket. But it was a good adaptation of tactics. You would happily just give up a forward healing Treant for a lack of aggression, basically.
Ooh, Dienzio with the quick sidestep, going to avoid taking a fatal amount of damage from starting all over there. Won't go down just yet. Archaic though on this Koshka, look at him! Immediately into the enemy jungle looking for T-Tigers. T-Tigers knows how Koshka's played. He's going to throw down that Drifting Dark, but Playboy Afro's with him. They're going to look for first blood, and it's going to be as easy as 1, 2, 3 for Archaic. He gets the kill.
Man, all the pressure generated in lane allowed Hammers to rotate Playboy Afro and Archaic into the enemy jungle, knowing that because of the low health on Zio, and because of the threat of a potential dive from starting and Playboy Afro combined, they could just move into the enemy jungle and get away with it for free, making it very difficult for Immortals to rotate and punish them, because Zio was so focused on taking minions under the turret. It's so important to make sure you're keeping your farm under turret. You don't want to sacrifice farm to that turret. So Zio could not rotate, and that's lane mechanics 101, Dalsy. Push the lane, rotate.
Yeah, and look at him, he's doing it again. T-Tigers, he is just going to have this over and over again. Immortals this time rotating as a 3 to try and stop this aggression. Bright Boa goes down, but Starting jumps around it. And it's going to be Archaic with another kill. Dienzio now in trouble, and I don't think he escapes here. Scoundrel tries his best, but it's Archaic with the double. Before this game started, Starting said in the lobby, Scoundrel, why did you give us Koshka? Archaic going to give you that quick 11-minute loss. And right now, Archaic is saying, yeah, boy, I am.
Goodness me, Dalsy. Let's take stock of... We talked about what Immortals had learned from last game to this game. Let's take stock of what Hammers have learned from last game to this game. Running a similarly aggressive composition, although you don't have that backline firing cannon of the Celeste. You now have a double dive melee composition with the support of a Captain Adagio. Very aggressive early game. You can get lots of work done. Hammers have learned... Let's do something with that aggression in the early game. Let's steal jungle. Let's put pressure on T-Tigers, and they have consistently head towards T-Tigers' backs. A double CS advantage for Archaic because of the pressure that they have put down here, Dalsy.
Yeah, it's going to be Immortals trying to learn from this mistake and put the pressure back on by rotating Dienzio back and forth, but this only gives Starting All Over advantages in the lane. It's a 10 CS lead for him, and Archaic is just having so much fun. In a bit of trouble this time. Let's see how this plays out. Playboy Afro pops the boosts, and that's going to be him escaping. Last game, it was Starting All Over who had the CS deficit, but now he's looking for a kill on Max Green, and T-Tigers, he's going low as well. Crystal Sentry going to get involved. The fountain popped. Hammers starting to hit a point where the Crystal Sentry does become an issue. But they've got themselves a huge gold lead, 2,500 at this point. It's not just kills, but it's farm as well.
One of the major comeback mechanics of Immortals in the previous game was Zio having a massive CS advantage over his opponents, spiking very early on because he was able to get tier 3 items more quickly and more readily than his opponent Starting All Over. This time round, it's the opposite way around. Starting All Over has the CS advantage. Dienzio is on the back foot. Suddenly, Vox spiking earlier is not going to happen as easily for Immortals. They're going to have to fully turtle this game to get themselves into a position where they might be able to fight. For the Immortals, the key is that as this game progresses, it's going to be about Frostburn control from T-Tigers in these fights and Max Green's Bright Bulwark. Bright Bulwark is the killer of the Hammers composition if used correctly and at the right time.
Let's talk about Frostburn, Scoundrel, because it's nowhere near. It's nowhere near. I think it's an understatement, and Max Green's caught out as well. Max Green's just going to get bursted. The fountain not enough. Archaic still has his ultimate. They're going to turn T-Tigers. That was a quick block. He is going to survive for it, and Archaic is going to go down. Now Dienzio looking for a double kill. Can he get it? Yes, he can. It's going to come through. What an error from Hammers.
Hammers, they went so aggressive, they burnt the fountain so early because I think Playboy was very worried about the turret damage that he was taking. They burnt that fountain, and then Archaic chose to re-engage. Once that Koshka ultimate is blocked, back off, especially under turret. There's no way that you can follow that up against a full HP target. even with the spike of the Aftershock and the Heavy Prism, it was, I think, just far too aggressive move there, and it really punished the Hammers roster because suddenly gold has been placed in the back pocket. Dienzio's got the Poison Shiv and the 6 Sins now, and T-Tiger is that much closer to the Frostburn.
Yeah, and that has just accelerated it. The point about Frostburn not being anywhere near is void. Yes, it's late, Scoundrel, but it's on the way.
You hit the nail on the head here, not to make a Dienzio Hammers pun or anything, but it's I'm just reminded of that moment. It's obviously it's a massive spike that usually you want to get between anywhere from 4 minutes to 5 minutes 30, right? That's usually like a good time frame to have picked up your Frostburn. If you're doing well or even, most people say that's a nice time to have picked up the Frostburn. So it's a little bit delayed here for T-Tigers. Can finish it up and go get it now, but because Hammers are threatening in lane, he doesn't feel like he can rotate to shop because it's going to put Dienzio and Max Green in an awkward position. But once that comes down, suddenly the control that it provides Dalsy might provide some respite for the Immortals roster.
There are reflex blocks on every member of Immortals, really respecting the Afterburn and the Koshka ultimate. Let's see how Hammers decide to play this as a double melee composition with their range in the form of an Adagio. Their siege is not there. They require all-in engage if they're going to be able to get objectives.
You hit a really, really nice point there, Dalsy. One of the major ways to capitalize on your advantages is by taking global objectives. Now, certain compositions are better at taking certain global objectives. For instance, this kind of composition from Hammers is going to be better at taking things like Goldmine and Crystal Sentry because they can commit to it and it's going to draw the enemy towards them, which as a double melee composition is what you want, right? But taking turrets is not this composition's strong point because you have to commit so hard like this.
Oh no. Starting all over, is he just straight up? Yes, he is. And the Oblivion put Playboy to sleep. I was wondering where the fountain was. He has Crucible available. What an error coming out of Hammers. Oh no.
It's deja vu.
It is deja vu because last week Hammers made error after error and it cost them so many advantages in the early game. Errors that you just don't make at this level of play, these kind of players. And it's devastating for them. They need a victory here to guarantee their spot. One of their win conditions, Scoundrel, as far as unified Western Live Championship plane tickets are concerned, is don't get swept by Immortals. And right now, it's looking like they're getting swept by Immortals.
Absolutely ridiculous. The Frostburn comes out. You saw the difference in siege potential between these two teams. It was a momentary, fleeting chance to get some damage onto a turret here for Immortals as a pause comes out. It was a momentary, fleeting chance. And Immortals got half the turret HP. How many fights have we seen Hammers pick off people and win and get almost next to nothing on that turret? I mean,
so many times.
Exactly. So many times, Dalsy. And that is just the pure difference between what kind of global objectives, which kind of compositions really function at doing well. A double melee composition usually has to get at least 2 out of 3 kills in the enemy team before they can safely push an enemy turret, unless they are planning a tower dive, right? And against the Lyra, I would almost never really recommend tower diving or turret diving because it's just so difficult because of the heal and the bright bulwark to negotiate your way through that. The Hammers roster would have been far better at just going straight up for Goldmine and saying, come meet us, Immortals. We're going to take this off the map. It's a big amount of global gold. You've got to come towards us. But they've been focusing on the turret. That's not the strength for them. You saw C9 do it, Dalsy, with the Fortress. They just ran at the enemy Crystal Sentry because it's one of those kind of things that they can focus.
Oh, they're going to try again onto the turret, and look at the damage they're taking. It's going to be Fountain this time coming out nice and early to keep them all alive and get them out of here. But can they turn the fight? Dienzio very far forward, a lot of damage from Archaic, but here comes that drifting Dark Malice and Verdict, and T-Tigers going to say, push them all back here. Happy to even just tank up the turret as well. Archaic comes forward, starting, knocks him back, but it's a huge reflex block. Oh, not enough! Archaic finds the kill, but will lose his life in the process. There's no Fountain available. And now, Immortals are looking for this turret, starting all over, no afterburn for 5 seconds, and he's low as it is. Immortals going to respectfully push themselves back here, waiting in the tri-bush, starting. Is he just going to dive into them? He's going to go very low! Able to escape. This is insane. Hammers are playing a very risky game, and Max Green says, I want ya. Playboy Afro goes the other end of the portal, but I think he's just dead here. Dienzio going to line down the damage. Oh, he escapes. And Archaic's going to come in. This could just be a throw after throw, a counter throw of throws. As Archaic trying to find a kill here, but he can't get in range, and Playboy Afro is no use to him either.
Look how heavily punished the Hammers roster was for pushing onto that turret. Even, you know, they were just essentially trying to ignore Immortals the best they could, but this double range so easily able to punish them for it, and then they were able to turn things around so nicely as well. T-Tiger's now heading to lane. He's got working towards what could either be a Broken Myth or an Eve of Harvest. I imagine Broken Myth, but the Eve of Harvest will give him the sustain necessary against the double melee, so that might be where he moves. I think the only way that Immortals lose this turret is if they get out-rotated. And in a situation like this, they are kind of out of position, and Hammers might look to push this pretty quickly.
Or Hammers decide to all dive onto the turret and they potentially suicide for it. It is going to be Max Green escaping. A silence comes out. It silences two. Playboy Afro doesn't block it up. Waiting used for that Crucible. Fountain comes out. The Crucible comes out as well, but it doesn't matter because starting once more goes down. And Archaic will follow. It's a double for T-Tigers. The portal in. Max Green leading the charge. He's going to block the damage and they're looking for the ace and it's going to come through clean for Immortals. They get a turret for themselves and they're going to take the gold lead.
Goodness me, Immortals running it again. Found their win conditions, found that Frostburn control in these fights. Max Green now getting a lot of health down, so that healing potential from him is that much stronger. And Dienzio, again, just able to kite so nicely. Silences have been so crucial in these fights as well, you feel, Doughty, because they have just been so impactful. A melee composition in general wants to group up, right? They want to commit to the same target. That's kind of what a dive composition like this is meant for. They want to try to clump around Adagio to make the best use out of his ultimate. That makes it that much easier for Dienzio to find those crucial multi-person silences. Man, Gangstars must be really worrying right now because Immortals look like a team that right now could potentially win the whole thing, and that would be very bad for Gangstars.
Yeah, and people said this. TSM said this about Immortals, that they, other than Cloud9, are the competition they fear the most. Now, I want to talk about the only way Hammers doesn't go to the Unified Western Live Championship as the turret finally goes down Hammers' fight, and maybe we'll talk about it later because Immortals want to fight. Max Green looking for the engage here. It's going to be Archaic onto T-Tigers, but look at the damage onto him. He's getting bursted. The Fountain won't save him, and Starting Stead as well cannot escape from this as T-Tigers looks to finish the job. Dienzio is going to look to find the kill onto Playboy Afro, and it's easy as that. Another ace for Immortals here, and they're looking for a choke point at 13.
Man, just as you saw in that fight, the control that Immortals now have, you dive a target, they get a 400 or so heal straight away from Max Green on this Lyra, which gives the movement speed bonus. The Bright Bulwark slows down this heavy dive melee composition as Archaic takes a huge chunk of damage there, Dalsy. And just the pure slow and speed that the Immortals team have is really, really proving major issues for Hammers. I think they made major mistakes in the early game about where they were trying to capitalize from their early game aggression. They kept trying to butt their heads against this turret when their composition is not really supposed to do that. They didn't draw Immortals in by going for Goldmine, which, by the way, I don't even think has been taken this game.
No, it hasn't.
And I think Hammers made major mistakes here.
I agree, X-Scoundrel. Now, I just want to clarify, Hammers, we won't get to clarify it. Starting all over goes in for Dienzio. Dienzio looking to escape. Dienzio just walked away. He gets a kill.
Baby.
Oh my god. Where are you, Hammers? Immortals are just showing you how Vainglory is played. Double kill comes through. Another ace. And what are they going to do? They're going to take the gold mine because they've already taken so many of these turrets.
So
all
much for the 11-minute win on Archaic's Koshka because Immortals are going to turn things right back on its head.
Okay, so talking about Unified Western Live Championships, the only way Hammers don't qualify is one, if Hammers get swept by Immortals, Immortals wins the weekend, Nova defeats Rogue and later scores more points in the day, Tempo defeats TSM, Hammers beats Cloud9 and then beats Tempo Storm in the semifinals. So already the win conditions are lost, the loss conditions are not completed because Gangstars did not defeat Cloud9. So that means that Hammers will be going to the Unified Western Live Championship. We can cut that out of our vocabulary. What's now happening is this third-seeded team is going to get no points if they lose this map. And that means that they may lose that third position, top position on day one. Another fight breaking out. Dienzio once more seemingly caught, but they're going to turn the fight around once more. Starting all over, going very low. But this time they find the kill onto Dienzio. This could be a fight for Hammers as Max Green going to go down. And look at that Kraken. So conveniently timed. What a throw potentially from Immortals.
It's definitely looking like Hammers are still fighting this. They've got only 3,000 gold to claw back, and then it's even. And I don't think T-Tigers is going to get there in time to try and take this Kraken. Major win for Hammers. The one issue that I think the Immortals roster had there, starting all over started that fight with a healing Treant buff. So then he committed very quickly to the Enzio, knowing that he was actually going to sustain a bit longer because he had that buff going on him. And then the one thing that the Immortals roster really struggles with is if they split up, and they were split that fight. They couldn't get multi-man healing with the Lyra. The Bright Bulwark wasn't going to get as effective. They were isolating their two carries because they were on opposite sides of the fight. Immortals just caught, unfortunately, by being a little bit too confident, you feel, in the enemy side jungle. And that was just a bad fight for Immortals to take because of the positioning.
Very hard for Hammers to push with this Krakening Scoundrel. Already we mentioned that their composition requires team fights, and they don't really want to be fighting under turrets. So this Kraken will secure the first turret here, the tier 2, and it's very likely it's going to do a great amount of damage to the choke point. But will Hammers look to fight is the question. The Bright Bulwark can shut them down immediately. Max Green times it well. Here's that Drifting Dark. It pushes everyone back so far. Archaic down to half health. No way they can fight now, and Immortals know it. They zone Hammers right off this Kraken, and that means that this choke point turret may even survive.
Wow, that would be a net gold gain for Immortals as well, because you only get 300 for the turret and you get 500 for the Kraken. So, yeah, it's a net gold gain here for Immortals, which is good for them. Yeah, great. Kraken, that's stalled the game out a bit longer for this melee composition, but I mean, look at the damage items. Archaic only 2, and yeah, Koshka starts to fall off towards the late game, especially on just a 2 damage item build. Starting all over, on the Tension Bow Sorrow Blade build, there's no longevity for him there. It's all burst orientated, and you can see Zio's now got both his Aegis and his Metal Jacket, meaning that it's going to be very difficult to burst this guy down, especially through the Lyra healing. They're going to try and use that range advantage and punish Hammers. And you saw, Dalsy, you illustrated it so well. The advantages that a Samuel brings against this kind of composition, if you start the sort of the engage off with the Drifting Dark and the Malice and Verdict, and you hit a couple of key targets with those skill shots, as a roster, as Hammers, you either commit or you don't with this composition. And if you're sort of getting battered from range, you're left in an awkward scenario where you can't commit because you've already taken the damage before the fight started.
Currently, Hammers have shown that they have the ability to win teamfights against Scoundrel, which means that if they're able to find the perfect mixture of an engage and panic out of Immortals, they can look to secure another team fight, take that choke point. This game gets later and later. This is the longest game we've had in NA so far. Oh. And if it goes longer than this, then it does mean the death timers start to stack up. Starting all over going to take a huge amount of poke, and you may think that's okay because there's an Adagio on your team who can heal you, but Adagio's healing is just nowhere near as good as Lyra's in this current meta. Makes things very difficult for the Hammers roster. Looks like a fight may break out. It's brewing. I can sense the tension in these players. They all group up, but Immortals very wisely just backing away and getting distance between them in this scary, aggressive composition from Hammers.
I really like the build from Max Green, by the way. Now, you might wonder why he's gone Contraption. This is generally one of the more accepted items on Lyra, specifically because the health and the cooldown reduction are really good for her. But also, one of the ways that you lose this game is by getting surprised through what is like a Death Brush setup. By having Contraption, you make that possibility far less likely as Zio jumps the wall here. They are really searching for a fight, our Immortals, right now, Dalsy.
They certainly are. Max Green, bit of poke onto him. It's a stacking of the Broken Myth for Archaic. Here we go, starting all over, going to dive on in. They're looking for an orb, but the Oblivion puts to sleep. It's a devastating result for Hammers. An ace, and that's it. GG. There's no way Hammers defend their base. Immortals with a 2-0 going to day 2.
Immortals keep their unified Western Live Championship dreams alive. They nail one hammer into the coffin of the Gangstars. They hammer one nail in the coffin to the Gangstars roster, who will be desperately waiting to see the rest of this weekend play out. And Hammers may be seceding their 3rd place spot. But, like you said, Dalsy, won't be too worried as their position is still guaranteed.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's a fantastic result for Immortals, and of course, all eyes on them to see how they perform in tomorrow's semi-finals as well. They will be going up against the winner of the next series in the semi-finals, which makes it all so much more exciting for us here watching this because we get to find out who is going to be Immortals' opponents as they head into day 2. Incredible result from them, very clean stuff, and finally the Immortals we expected. Let's see what the desk has to say about this Immortal victory.
Immortals managing to take the series 2-0. And honestly, what should have been an exceptionally close series, Immortals took both games by the horns and just ran them all the way home. The first one, the first half of this game, struggling with my words here, the first half of this game was definitely not as one-sided as the first game in the series, however. It was very much back and forth to start the game off.
Yeah, I mean, to start the game, even as we got into the mid-game, there's still a fair bit of back and forth between these teams. It wasn't really over until, a little bit past the, 15, 16-minute mark. But it was really well played. Again, this is a situation where all these teams in North America are stepping up in a big way and bringing the fight to their opponents. Regardless of if they have a lead or not, everyone is playing very aggressively, looking to find these kills so that they can try and get the wins.
Yeah, and Hammers played really well in the early game, and they definitely flexed those muscles and got a lot of kills, and were ahead almost by like 2k gold lead. And then that's when I knew mid-game, when IMT started getting kills back at them, that was really bad for Hammer, because you don't want to give kills if you're in early game composition, because the bounties are very crucial. And they're really aggressive. They're diving under turret, making some plays here, and Starting gets actually zoned out and killed in a lot of these fights. So that's something that I think they need to consider next time. And once Hammer's got Frostburn, Lyra just outscales Adagio really hard. Adagio is better than Lyra early, but late game, not really. And that's when IMT then was able to outplay, and Zio looked phenomenal in both games. I mean, he literally outplayed Starting so many times. It was pretty fantastic to see.
Zio was playing out of his mind this series, but so were the rest of the players on Immortals as well. Exceptional team effort. I want to take a closer look at one of the fights that happened at 11 minutes in the game. This is where Immortals first got a significant victory in the game and actually managed to grab an ace for themselves.
Yeah, this was, once the kind of things had sort of settled down a little bit. Say that when it's 9 kills at 11 minutes, but Immortals were able to find a bit of footing here and start winning team fights a little bit more consistently, because they were able to just find their targets. The target selection and target focus from Immortals was very impressive this game. I mean, even going so far as to dive underneath 2 turrets because they knew that they had the damage to find these kills and that they could get out afterwards as long as they secured the ace. But they focused on taking down the damage dealers as quickly as they could. And once you pop one, if you make a fight a 2 versus 3, I say this all the time, if you make it a 2 versus 3 right off the bat, 9 times out of 10 you are going to win that team fight.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't max have to use Fountain. Fountain was still up that fight. And that was a key fight because they got 2 turrets. Like, Immortals got 2 turrets from that fight. And literally the game was in their favor from there. And then they had a lot of nice engages and counter engages. Hammers had the right thought process. They tried to engage and lock down Zio or Tigers. But Max Green with his sigils, a lot of times he would pop the sigil, they would boot out. And then the whole team would eat Samuel. This is why I knew this wasn't good, because Samuel's AoE. Look at this part right here. The sigil gets popped, Zio boots. And look, everyone is just eating the Samuel, Malice, and Verdict. This is not a good competition. You don't want to play triple melee or double melee into Samuel, because he's going to excel with all the AoE damage and the Eve healing, the Frostburn, Broken Myth being stacked. He's just going to destroy everybody. And they did really well with fighting in those key choke points.
Now, this was an important moment for Hammers, because it wasn't just plain sailing for Immortals. Hammers did come back somewhat.
Yeah, they started to find a few opportunities for themselves, but it was just, a factor of just getting that massive burst. And unfortunately for them, it was just, they jumped in and Immortals were ready for that fight. They put out so much damage in such a short amount of time. Again, very difficult to be able to react. And you can see once more Fountain not getting used because the fight was just over way too quickly.
Yeah, for sure. And another victory coming through there for Immortals. That means they take the series 2-0. And the MVP for that series has to be DNZO for me. He played out of his mind in both games on that carry role, showing us how Vox is meant to be played there. And you can see that, like, despite how Immortals haven't had that great of a win rate so far, his stats are still pretty good. KDA is above average, and, he's building up those statistics for himself.
Yeah, that was funny. I mean, Zio was basing there at the end, so pretty funny because Zio and Starting have kind of this rivalry. And they're both really young, both super talented players, and they always want to call each other out when they win and et cetera. So it's pretty fun stuff for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I love to see rivals like that blossoming. And